One time, there were two cats. One was a spotted and striped brown cat named Basil. The other was a sleek black cat named Bast. Now Basil lived on a street called Brighton, and Bast lived on a street called Ball. And both streets were in a town called Bellevue. In that little town of Victorian houses, where the people came and went, and the world moved on and on, there was one story that no one ever knew. No one human, that is, until recently. As it happened, Basil and Bast were two strikingly normal house cats. Or normal enough until the lights in their houses went out and their people went to sleep. Then Basil and Bast would meet in the dark on their secret street corner somewhere near Harrison and Lincoln, as rumor has it, and set forth on another big adventure. Sometimes they would travel far. Sometimes they would travel very far. And sometimes they would travel extremely very far. It all depended on what adventure they were going to go on next. Adventures they sought, and adventures they found. And on one such adventure, Basil and Bast stopped the 100 Years' War from becoming the 200 Years' War. The first 100 years to be fought with poodles on one side and archers on the other. It is well known that at some point in the 14th century, England and France were at wits' end with the battle they were fighting. It also happened that the victory once seen by the English archers in Normandy was soon going to be outdone by the French. For although the English had their archers, the French brought in their secret poodle weapons. For poodles to be of any consequence at all, it is important to know that the arrows the English archers used were made of wood. And even in those early days, people knew that poodles were gluttons for playing fetch with sticks. In fact, the best poodles leapt from the ground and caught the flying thing snap in their teeth. France bred the best poodles by the thousands. What's more, the poodles were trained in the art of fetch fair, graduated to a knightly poodlehood, recruited by the poodles of arms, then given to sporting the colours of their respective troops, whereupon they marched the hills and valleys, proud and mighty, seemingly invincible, noses in the air, pink, blue and purple, right alongside the knights on their horses and shining men at arms. And when the English arrows flew, the poodles were to leap into the air and bring those arrows down. Now the English archers had a few dogs here and there, but nothing like the poodles. What the English archers also had, and something far less accounted for, if ever accounted for at all, were a couple of cats. One was named Basil, and the other was named Bast. And as far as anyone was concerned, well, no one was concerned about them because no one knew why they were there. Mostly, Everyone accepted the cats marching along with the troops from battle to battle, hill to hill, and town to town, until the entire English army reached the hill at Normandy. As it was mentioned, Basil and Bast were not the ordinary type of house cats. True, they would lounge in the sun, and they hated the rain. But such has always been true for most archers. Seeing this similarity, the captain of the archers, Fintan, made Basil and Bast their very own war bows, and presented them at a campfire one night. "Well," Captain Fintan said gruffly, "if you're going to be hanging around with us archers, you might as well become archers yourselves." Basil and Bast bowed to Captain Fintan and smiled at each other. Then the archers cheered and gave Basil and Bast quivers of arrows, sized just right for cats. That night there was a feast to celebrate, for the English army was sure the cats had brought them luck so far, and all were hoping for the same luck on the next day. Eventually, the food was eaten and the leftovers set aside. The campfire died down, the archers went to sleep in their tents, and Basil and Bast kept a lookout for anything suspicious. After a while, Basil and Bast curled up with one another, as cats will do, but kept their bows and arrows close by, just in case. And so it happened that dawn came and all was still and silent. Almost. Basil's ear twitched. Suddenly, she jumped to her feet and hissed. "What is it, Basil?" Bast asked. "Get your bow and wake up Captain Fintan," Basil cried. "The French have brought a secret weapon." Bast understood immediately. Her tail puffed out, and she arched her back, hissing and meowling, spitting and growling down the hill at the things hiding in the woods below. All the ruckus Basil and Bast caused woke up Captain Fintan. "Aaron!" Captain Fintan called to his #1 deputy. "Go see what those cats are fussing about." "Yes, sir." Aaron saluted him and raced out. He peered at the cats, who were still hissing and hollering, growling and yowling, spitting and spatting, and positively puffy beyond belief at something forming a line at the bottom of the hill. "Poodles, sir!" Aaron cried. "The French have brought their poodles." "Poodles?" Captain Fintan asked, positively perplexed. "Well, send out the archers." "We can't, sir. The poodles are trained in the art of fetch fair, sir," Aaron replied. "Fetch fair?" "Yes, sir." Captain Fintan slumped. "This is bad," he muttered. Aaron bowed his head. It seemed the archers had finally met their match. Suddenly, Aaron had an idea. "We could ask Basil and Bast, sir." "The cats?" "They seem to know about the poodles, sir." Captain Fintan thought that was a brilliant idea. "Well, by George, ask the cats. What are we waiting for? Cats!" Basil and Bast raced into the tent. They saluted the captain and Aaron, then promptly sat down to clean their toes. Captain Finton cleared his throat. Basil and Bast, we have a situation. The cats rightfully agreed. Not that anyone would know the difference. They were still busy cleaning their toes. Captain Finton continued, Do you have any ideas? Bast started pacing. Basil swished her tail. They're in formation, Erin said, peering out of the tent at the poodles and soldiers in the valley below. Captain Finton grunted. Suddenly, Basil had an idea. I know, Basil said, grinning. All fell to whispers as the archers outside lined up for a battle where they knew their arrows would never work. At the bottom of the hill, the poodles were preparing for war. Dig some ditches, Captain Finton hollered from inside his tent. Dig some ditches, he yelled from behind the archer lines. Dig some ditches, he cried, picking up a shovel and handing it to Erin. Basil and Bast set the example, and halfway down the hill, they started digging their own ditches in the hillside. They were not large ditches, and not quite deep ditches, but ditches they were, and ditches were dug by cats and archers and even one of the English dogs. I hope it works, Bast whispered to Basil. Let's go, Basil replied. All around them the archers dug. Bast turned around and stuck her tongue out at the poodles at the bottom of the hill. It momentarily stirred the poodles into a chaotic frenzy. For if the poodles hadn't known about Basil and Bast before, they surely knew about the cats now. All of the poodles finally noticed both cats. Not only that, but Bast had gravely insulted the poodle's honor. Now, it is known in parts of the world that dogs will forget all of their training whenever they see a cat, especially an English archer cat with her tongue sticking out. But such was not the case with the well-trained army poodles of France's finest poodle brigade. They forgot themselves momentarily, but the poodles of arms remembered their training, and so reorganized everything accordingly. Bast laughed at them. Then she followed Basil back to the campfire from the previous night. Here they are, Basil yelled, pointing to a pile of leftover bones from the campfire feast. As many as you can. Basil and Bast piled the leftover bones into their arms and carried them to Captain Finton, whereupon he grinned, glint in his eyes, and yelled his next command. Archers! Fill the ditches with bones! All of the ditches! All of the bones! Poodle fetch fair will not work on our arrows today! All of the archers put the leftover bones in the newly dug ditches, and Bast and Basil and Erin helped. Once all of the bones were in all of the ditches, everyone raced back to the top of the hill, for they had placed them just in time. The poodles began to advance. Hold your arrows, boys, Captain Finton said to his command of archers. And cats, too, he added, after being gently reminded by Bast, who batted Captain Finton's leg with her little clawed cat paw. Hold, Captain Finton reminded everyone again, while the poodle line approached. Closer and closer they came, poodles in the front, poodles in the back, barking and growling, snarling and howling, for the poodles were going to war. It may be noted that certain events change the course of history. If Basil and Bast were not there that day, things may not have turned out like they did. What Basil told Captain Finton in the secrecy of his tent was that poodles may be well trained in the art of fetch fair, but certainly, at heart, they were just dogs, and no dog could ever be expected to pass up a bone, especially not a bone that was found buried in a ditch. So, while the poodles were busy with their hunting, the archers could shoot their arrows and would never have to worry about the art of fetch fair again. Captain Finton loved the idea, and everyone set forth with the plan. "Hold!" Captain Finton cried to his nervous lines of archers. The poodles ran up the hill, and were so close that Basil and Bast could smell their poodle breaths. "Repulsive," Bast whispered to Basil. "Positively dog-like," Basil replied. The poodles ran faster, and the line drew nearer, and nothing could stop the poodles from their awful poodle advance. "Hold!" Captain Finton cried again. Just then, the first of the poodles reached the first of the ditches, and the first of the poodles' advance stopped advancing, which forced the rearguard to stop dead in their tracks, and "Bones!" the poodles of arms cried. Forgetting their proper place in battle, they dug the bones out of the ditches and stopped the advance completely. "By George, it's working!" Captain Finton said, delighted. Bast sat down and licked her tail. And what historians will never mention in any book, in any language, is that even though poodles were well trained in the art of fetch fair, they were not so good at passing up bones. Especially the delicious bones of an English feast left over from the night before. What those poodles did next shocked even the French army commanders. After all of the poodles found all of the bones, they ran, snarling and growling, yipping and yowling, howling and barking, back to the lines of the French. But the poodles did not stop there. To the delight of the English, the poodles ran past their own lines and far into the woods to bury the bones they recently found hidden in ditches created by archers who ate at the feast of the night before. The French side cried, and the English side cheered, for it was well known that without poodles there could be no fetch fair, and without fetch fair the arrows would suit their purpose well. However, the French army was so embarrassed by the failure of their secret poodle weapons that they turned tail, just like the poodles. "I think they're going home, sir," Aaron said to Captain Finton. "So they are," Captain Finton replied, smiling at Basil and Bast, who were lounging in the sun like any other archer would do on such a victorious day. "Let's pack it up and head for home," Captain Finton said. "But what do we tell them when we get there, sir?" Aaron asked. Captain Finton chuckled. "We tell them that the war is finally over." "Sir?" "We'll tell them we have our own secret weapons," Captain Finton said, winking at Basil and Bast. And so it came to be that Basil and Bast were highly regarded by the English archers no matter where they went. Yet, since that day, not one word was ever mentioned about the battle that stopped the 100 Years' War from becoming the 200 Years' War. Basil and Bast supposed it was better that way. It may have been a little embarrassing for the French to lose their entire platoon of secret poodle weapons to a couple of house cats. Captain Finton, being an honourable man, and maybe feeling a little sorry for the French, and twice as sorry that he never shouted the arrow-firing command, "Fire at will," decided it would be better never to mention the incident to anyone. The archers, feeling sorry that they never heard Captain Finton's command, agreed wholeheartedly. Basil and Bast were given awards in a ceremony that night. Captain Finton invited Basil and Bast to sail back to England with them, but as it happened, Basil and Bast wanted to go to their own homes, back to their little hometown of Bellevue, to their respective Victorian houses, on their respective hometown streets, with their respective hometown people. Captain Finton thanked the cats again, but warned them of something. "Be careful of pirates on your way back home," he said. Basil and Bast thanked Captain Finton and his archers, boarded their own sailing ship, and set out for home. Finally, they made it to the friendly shores. "It sure is good to be back home," Basil told Bast when they reached their secret street corner. "It sure is," Bast replied. "But what did Captain Finton mean about the pirates?" Basil smiled. "Maybe we'll have to find out one day." "It sounds interesting," Bast commented, "but for another day." She yawned. All around her, the town started waking up for another on and on day. She wanted to go home to her people, where she knew she could find a warm, sunny spot to sleep in, as strikingly normal house cats will do. On the way home, she thought about pirates, and what a wonderful adventure that would be.